If there is no God, then there is no such thing as objective value of a human life. Why? Because if there is no God, your number came up in a Monte Carlo game, the same way as my number came up in a Monte Carlo game, we're cosmic accidents. And for you to try and argue that human beings have innate value as if they're cosmic accidents is a joke.
I understand what you're saying, but I guess I just disagree with the idea that the only way you can find an objective truth is through God.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, wait a second. I agree with you. Atheists can hold on to objective truth in mathematics, science, history.
For morality.
For morality. My atheist friends are very good people. And when my atheist friends do good, that's good. But you see, what my atheist friends don't have is a solid basis for those objective morals. They have a relative basis, which means the morality that they've created, if they're going to be intellectually consistent, is relative. Right?
I understand how you're phrasing it, but I still disagree.
Okay, why? Why do you disagree?
Various reasons, I guess.
Okay, let me give you the best reason you would disagree.
Okay.
Because you can't live that out. You can't believe at the top of your head there is no God, human beings are cosmic accidents, and now I'm going to treat everybody like they're a cosmic accident. Why? Because you have a conscience, and your conscience convicts you, no, if I treat him as an accident, that's wrong. It's not right. And you see, my point is, if you can't live out what you believe, you better go back and question, is what I believe true?
You can go the other way, though. Like, you can say that there absolutely is just randomness and chaos and whatever in the universe.
Yes.
And even though that is what I believe to be the case, that means that I get to choose the value of the world, essentially. And
yes.
I can say that
yes.
even though it's all chaotic, even though in the scope of the universe nothing else matters, I am choosing to put value innately on a human life.
Yes, sir. Agree 100% with you.
Okay.
All I'm asking you to do is be honest and acknowledge that whatever your definition is today of what it means to be good and decent and loving, if next week you say the opposite is really true, you are not incorrect, you're not wrong, because today you choose to love him. If next week you choose to hate him, that's not bad, it's your choice, and your choice rules. That's all I'm trying to tell you guys. Now, if you'll think seriously enough about that, you will begin to realize my life ultimately is meaningless. Because if I choose to love him today and hate him next week, both are equally valid. Try and live that out, guys. You can't live that out.
So you're also saying that you can't find value outside of yourself unless it's through God?
No, it's not the point. The point is, if there is no God who creates him and her with innate value, then the value that you give them, or that our culture gives them, or UT gives them, or whoever, it's relative, which means it's not objectively true, it's a fantasy, it's an illusion, it's a taste. Like, do you prefer broccoli to cabbage? Do you prefer loving him to hating him? Do you prefer dehumanizing her to respecting her? It's just a taste. Similar to, do you prefer corn or peas? It's a taste, that's all. It's relative. It's something you create in your head. And if you want to create the opposite tomorrow or next week, it's not wrong. It's just you change your taste. And I'm standing here saying, no, it is not a taste of mine to love and respect him. It is an absolute moral that God put me on this planet to love and respect the man, not to dehumanize him.
Right, so again, you're saying that the only objective morals out there come from God.
Precisely.
And there is no way to create objective morals any other way.
Precisely.
Okay, I disagree. It's fine.
Okay, but who creates objective morals? Who does? If there is no God, come on, bud, you're saying you disagree, fine, I respect you. But please, would you please explain to me, who on earth creates objective morals? Who does that?
But you're just saying that if I change my opinion this week versus next week, for example, then that's okay because it's relative.
Yeah.
But What I'm saying is there can be, I guess what you were saying as far as culture or government or whatever outside group is coming together and for whatever reason understands that there is some fundamental thing there that can come from somewhere else. I guess, like, obviously there's tons and tons of examples of people who never heard of a Christian God, but would still say they had objective reasons for what they believe or whatnot.
Yeah, it's called a conscience.
Okay, so sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And every atheist friend of mine has a conscience.
Okay.
And that's why my atheist friends love to say with the top of their head, morality is relative. But when it comes to living out their lives, my atheist friends contradict that relativism. Their conscience kicks into gear, and they say, oh, no. To torture an innocent child is absolutely evil. What do you mean, absolutely evil, my atheist friend? You've started with no God, which means morality is relative, and now you're telling me that to torture an innocent child is absolutely evil. Give me a break. You are so hypocritical in your thinking, it's scary. If morality is relative, then if I choose not to torture an innocent child today, that's cool. But if tomorrow I choose to torture an innocent child, that's not evil. It's my choice.
So are you saying that consciousness is God's thing?
Conscience is a gift from God, as is the rational mind. Correct.
More like a survival instinct,
Oh, is that what it is?
which isn't a contradiction.
Okay.
That's true, it's not a contradiction.
Then if morality is based on a survival instinct, why don't you slaughter handicapped people? Because they're a drain on your natural resources that are limited.
I think you know that's a ridiculous question.
No, it's not a ridiculous question. It's a very real question. And if survival instinct is the basis of morality, then why not rape a woman? That just helps the evolutionary cycle continue.
Those are a lot of assumptions.
No, they're not assumptions, buddy.
Well-
Just think about it. It's real.
Human beings are naturally social. I mean, there's a lot of things that prove that we need social interaction in order to survive, essentially. There are people who say that isolation is worse than torture. Like, so
There are
you
people
think
who say
that being able to maintain social bonds is crucial to survival. And
Fine.
if you break morals that destroy social bonds, then you're going to hinder your ability to survive.
That's great. But guess what? My children are home and they're really hungry. Therefore, for me to steal from you makes a boatload of sense to me. Guess what? If I'm Adolf Hitler and I'm watching Germany go down the tubes economically, and I figure out a way, with the promotion of Nazism, to help Nazi Germany economically get out of the doldrums, I'm just trying to help people. And guess what? If I have an overly active sex drive and I want to rape a woman, who are you to tell me that that's socially unacceptable? I think it's socially acceptable. And who are you to foist your opinion on me? See, sir, if you're going to form the basis of morality as a social contract or what's better for humanity, the question is, who's going to define the social contract?
Society.
Really? How does a gang... Good. So how does white South African society define the value of a black person? How does America define the value of a black person at the time of the Dred Scott decision? How does Nazi Germany define the value of a Jew at the time of Adolf Hitler? Scary, sir. Absolutely scary. So just remember, there are consequences to what you're saying.
And so again,
Flawed morality. It's not.
Pardon?
I said it's just flawed morality.
What do you mean flawed?
Well, obviously the morals were not in line with what most people today would consider moral.
Yeah, well, I would argue that is chronological arrogance. Just because I am younger than Adolf Hitler doesn't mean that I'm more correct than him. What century saw the most murders on the planet? The 20th century. Okay, so obviously the 20th century was not better when it comes to murders than the 19th or 18th or 17th century.
there's also a lot more people. You're talking about just sheer numbers.
Yeah.
There's literally millions more people, so it would be possible to have almost like everybody died before the 20th century. Like you can't say that the numbers themselves are a good argument. It has to be a percentage of population or something like
Look
that.
at the percentages.
But are you
20th
saying?
century was the most bloody century in human history.
But are you saying that, like, again, murders and all that other stuff, like, that's only happening because people are not religious?
No. Murders happen because I am a flawed human being. So are you. So are we all. We all have value because we're all created in the image of God, but we're all flawed. That's why we experience guilt. I experience guilt because I know what's good, and at times I do the opposite.
But so, like, this conversation started because we were talking about relativism and, like, objective religion,
Yep.
God, whatnot, versus society and whatnot.
Yep.
So, and then you asked, like, okay, but if you're going to be relative, then it's fine if I say, like, next week I want to murder somebody.
No. It's not objectively wrong.
But then
That's all I said.
But then you just said, okay, so then bad things can happen because people are flawed in general.
Yes.
So I don't understand then why even bring that up if the go back. Because you're
I'm
going back to say that people can be flawed and do bad things whether they believe in God or not, but then you also said that people are doing bad things because morals are relative.
No, I didn't say that. People are doing bad things because we have a sinful nature, a readiness to sin factor we're born with.
Okay. So
Okay?
why bring up the relative question thing in the first place?
Because I was obviously trying to dynamite your thinking right out of the water about moral relativism, and then you argued, no, there can be no God, and I can make an objective moral. It's impossible. And then he jumped in very well and said, well, society's the basis. Well, that doesn't change relativism, because it depends what society you're living in. White Africa, South Africa, Nazi Germany, America at the time of the Dred Scott decision, it's all relative.
And so it comes back to faith then, because you have to faithfully believe that there is a God in order for there to be an objective reality or objective moral truth.
All I'm asking you guys to do is intellectually, no faith, intellectually realize, philosophically, that if there is no God, morality is relative. Then secondly, I'm saying, fine, if that's what you believe, I want to watch you live it out. And I don't think you can. I think you'll be a flaming hypocrite. Why? Because if this guy hurts you badly enough, you're not going to look him in the face and say, well, from my perspective, what you did really was wrong. But I realize it's all relative, so go ahead and do it again. No, you're going to look him in the face and say, you should not have punched me out. You should not have stolen my backpack. You should not have dehumanized me the way you did. And when you use the word should, you're no longer a moral relativist. You're appealing to an objective moral, and you're saying, buddy, will you please wake up and smell the coffee? Stop dehumanizing me.
And again, I can only say stop dehumanizing me if I believe in God.
Obviously not. Come on now.
No, because
Listen
again,
more carefully, sir. You can say whatever you want to say. But what you have to realize is, if you believe that morality is relative, then when you tell me I should not dehumanize him, that's just relative. Your opinion is, for me to punch him is dehumanizing. From my perspective, he needs to be punched.
and the only way that God is not relative is if there is the absolute 100% faith in the objective truth of God.
Nope, not
No?
it.
Okay.
I got to go back to junior high and take a course in communication. Sir, this is so simple. Come on, you got to get it. If in reality there is no God, then we create right and wrong. White South Africans create right and wrong. Nazi Germans create right and wrong. The University of Texas creates right and wrong. You create right and wrong. He creates right and wrong. I create it, which means it's all relative. It's not objectively true. The only way there can be a moral absolute, objective morality, is if there is some mind prior to the human mind that creates him with value. If he has value, then if I mock him, if I dehumanize him, if I steal his wallet, that is objectively evil, because I am attacking his value as a human being created in the image of God. His value has been given him by God. Regardless of what I believe, I'm just laying out the two options for you. Regardless of what you believe. And I'm just asking you to be intellectually consistent. That's all I'm saying. Be consistent.
So is this even, like, helpful then? Like,
You bet it is.
so, I mean, like, if you're gonna imagine, like, again, society or whatnot is deciding to create their laws or beliefs or culture and what is right and what is wrong.
Right?
Like right now, like, I'm not going to attack anybody here for multiple reasons, one of them being the law itself.
Sure.
and again, just my own personal moral, not
Good.
wanting to attack people.
I applaud you. Great.
So, is that, like, if you have a human being who has, a moral compass of some kind, and they live their lives and they do all of that, then does it really matter if it's objective or relative? Like,
If you're not a thinking person, it doesn't matter. It just is. But if you're a thinking person, you got to move from is to ought, and you got to ask yourself: if I abuse a woman, is that relatively wrong because I'm part of the intellectual elite at UT? Which means it's just relatively wrong based on whatever the intellectual elite at UT define. Or is my abusing a woman absolutely, objectively wrong because that woman is created in the image of God, and when I attack and dehumanize that woman, that is attacking a woman with innate value, not value that's been given her by the intellectual elite or by the church or whatever. Value given her by God.
I guess what I'm saying is, imagine an example where two people live exactly the same lives,
Yes.
in every conceivable way possible, except that one believes in God and one does not. But from an outside point of view, you cannot tell which is which.
Uh-huh.
So either way,
Yeah.
either way though,
Yeah.
you cannot say they both live the same exact life. They both behaved morally, they both respected people, they both did everything exactly the same. At their deathbed, one believed in God and one did not.
Yeah.
If they both lived exactly the same life, does it really matter if it's relative or objective?
Okay. The whole reason I'm working on you with this argument is because I think that your conscience is a clear piece of evidence that there is some type of God. Has nothing to do with Jesus, but there's some type of mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines right and wrong. In other words, I'm jamming on every atheist friend of mine. Come on, guys. If you believe something that morality is relative, but you find in your marriage, in your family, in your business, in your neighborhood, that you can't live it out, don't you think you better go back and question whether my moral relativism is true or not?
I think it's pretty ambitious to say that consciousness itself is evidence of God when we have so many intelligent species on the planet. Like, really good documentary on Netflix about octopi. They have their own form of intelligence. They're believed to feel things.
Yeah.
And some, not necessarily conscious because we don't quite understand it.
Yeah.
But that's pretty ambitious for you to say, oh, consciousness, oh, it must be God. You know what I'm saying?
Conscience, not
Conscience.
consciousness.
Conscience.
Conscience.
Yeah.
The innate ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Okay, it's real simple, sir. If I murder him, if I step on him, are you going to arrest me? Have me arrested? Yes. I mean, you guess that one, okay? If I step on an ant or a cockroach, are you going to have me arrested? No. Why? Why are you going to have me arrested if I murder him, but you're not going to have me arrested if I murder a cockroach? I'm standing here arguing there is a difference between him and a cockroach. He's a human being created in the image of God with an innate value, innate significance. The cockroach is not a human being created in the image of God. I'm in a position of responsibility to protect my wife and children from getting diseases. Therefore, I will fight bacteria. I will fight any animal who tries to invade my home and sicken my wife and kids. There is a difference between you stepping on a cockroach versus you stepping on a baby. Big
If you
difference.
stepped on a puppy, I would probably do something about a puppy, right?
Good. Okay, fine. So is there a difference between breaking the neck of a puppy versus breaking the neck of a baby?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Why? Why would you say yeah?
I just value human life more.
Thanks for your honesty. I just value human life more. Totally relative, a personal taste, kind of like, yeah, I'm going to eat corn tonight. Not broccoli, because I hate broccoli. But corn, man, I really dig corn. Puppy, break their neck. Human being, don't break their neck. Why? Because I have a taste. I prefer human beings to puppies. Totally arbitrary, totally relative. See, friend, you can't live that out. You can tell me you believe that. I don't think you'll live it out. I think you know very well, because you have a conscience, that to break the neck of a baby is radically different from breaking the neck of a puppy. Why? That's what you got to ask yourself. Why do I believe that? Stuart, what do you have to say?
Well, just think about those who, for example, would say if a baby lacks self-awareness up to the age of 30 days or even at 2 years old, some people still believe that they lack self-awareness. It's okay to end that life. That would be infanticide in my mind. So it still comes back to two questions when it comes to something like abortion, for example. Does a fetus have worth, and scientifically, is it a human being? So does that, I believe a fetus is a human being, have actual worth and value? If so, why? And secondly, scientifically, would you consider it a human being? And if you go back to the early Roman Empire, you have infanticide everywhere. That culture decided it is totally fine to kill your babies, especially if they are females. Then just throw them on the dump heap. It was Christians, and it was considered very, very weird, Christians going to dump heaps right after the babies were thrown on them, taking them into their own homes and raising them. And that is because they believed that every single human being was created in the image of God, had innate value and worth, so they were going to do this. But you need something from the outside saying, a transcendent source saying that you have value and worth, in order to stabilize society in a way where value and worth remain in a human being. Otherwise, it's like the guy who was standing out here a couple years ago when we were here, and he said, I don't have any value as a human being whatsoever. I'm a punk college student, junior year. I have not done anything yet for society. I have no value and worth. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty consistent with his atheism. I'm pretty impressed that he said that.
Yep.
But I certainly hope that not too many people are going to hang around him too often when you get to the point of thinking, okay, if you have no value and worth, I can just dump on you. I can even get to the point of killing you because you're completely, just egregiously sucking wind in a world where you don't need to exist because you don't have value and worth. So that's the Christian understanding when it comes to this issue of weighing value and worth of a human being.
Yeah, but Stuart, I got a reason why abortion is good. Because I want to have sex with as many women as possible. And oops, if someone gets pregnant, I certainly don't want to have the responsibility of caring for a baby. So I love abortion. Or secondly, I am part of the upper middle class of the United States. And if low-income people have babies, too many of them, my taxes are going to go up, or I'm going to have to support nonprofits that adopt unwanted kids. And guess what? I want to have sex anytime I want to, and if the woman gets pregnant, I want to get rid of the inconvenience, the unborn baby. Or if low-income people get pregnant, I don't want to have to help them take care of their babies. So that's why I'm for abortion. So what would you say to me?
That's exactly right. That child or baby has no innate value and is just in the way. It's like one comedian I was listening to not too long ago. She is pro-choice, but she made the joke showing an inconsistency in her own thinking of how ridiculous it is, the thought of, I know my calendar, because of all the tours I have to take, is about to get very busy. I should probably just abort this baby. And it was a joke, and yet she also showed some honesty in it. Where it's, if this baby, if this fetus, if this child, whatever it might be, she would say, just if the baby, obviously is still in you, is an inconvenience, kill the thing. Because it's an inconvenience to you and your own selfish type of lifestyle. That was her words. She's pro-choice, not mine.
It doesn't matter whether or not you determine that a child has value. There are clear cases with adult human beings who clearly have the right to life. We clearly understand they have value, and yet we still find that in some instances, failing to keep an obligation to keep them alive is morally permissive. It's not the same thing as saying that it's morally correct. There's a distinction between saying something is morally correct and something is morally permissible.
Okay.
For example, suppose that you have a patient who requires a very specific organ, and only you can furnish that organ.
Right.
You are not under a moral obligation. You haven't done anything morally wrong to give him that organ.
Good. Okay. Is it morally permissible for me to murder him?
No.
Okay. So you agree with me that although there's a lot of moral relativism in this world,
I'm not
there are also
arguing.
some moral absolutes.
I'm not arguing
and for me to
moral
murder
relativism.
him is wrong.
I'm not arguing moral relativism. I agree that morality is objective, but even that does not require the acknowledgement of the existence of a God.
Sure it does.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Euthyphro objection?
Yeah. Well, that's a pile of garbage, that thing, line of thinking. Because the answer to that, the answer to that is real simple.
What is it?
Good and evil are eternal values because they flow from the character of God. So when God does something, We don't measure him against the good and evil that existed before him, because there's nothing before God, because God is eternal.
God determines good and bad, yes.
God's character, which is eternal, defines good and evil.
So what does the statement "God is good" mean?
It
That
means
God
that his
agrees that God
character
good?
is just. It is fair.
But you said that goodness and just comes from God's own determination. So God is good simply means God approves of God. That doesn't mean anything.
It means God is eternal, and because God is eternal, his character has defined good throughout eternity.
What's the distinction between God's character and God the object, God the subject?
It means very simply that good is real. It's a real value. It means that love is real. It's a
saying-
real value.
This argument is making a mockery of the history of early modern philosophers, ethical philosophers who have delineated a countless array of moral theories that are objective and don't require the
And
existence
they
of God.
disagreed with each other, and I, as a follower of Christ, disagree with them.
But
And
you're-
I hope you acknowledge that that's a possibility.
It doesn't
That we
matter whether or
respect
not they
each other
disagree.
enough to listen to what the other person says and then disagree.
People disagree about Christianity all the time. That doesn't-
Exactly. So why are you bringing all the ancient philosophers in?
Because your argument is that you can't have an objective moral world or
You're
framework
wrong.
without God.
That's correct. And any philosopher worth his salt understands that.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
Not even close.
Then ask the philosophy professor, what makes a particular moral objectively true?
Well, you can take the utilitarianism route. Just think that happiness is it. That's an example. That's not what
That
I
doesn't
would.
make an objective moral. That's embracing an idea of utilitarianism. And if you think that respecting women is good, but I think that date raping women is good, because it is more useful for me to date rape, then I'm just as right as you are. And we both use utilitarianism to justify our aberrant behavior.
The criteria of utilitarianism can apply to objective circumstances. It doesn't
How?
require, because it posits a rule that is itself far-reaching enough to cover all cases under.
Who says? Who posits the rule?
Do you know what a priori
Just a
knowledge is?
Platonist principle, right?
Do you know what a priori knowledge is?
Yeah.
No, that's
It's a Platonist principle you're appealing to.
and that's not bad. That's a good argument. So keep going with it.
So for a priori knowledge, it's possible for people to have knowledge without that is analytical. It's not empirical. It's not like my knowledge that there's a camera right there. It's knowledge about mathematics is a priori, insofar as mathematics can be determined definitionally. That stuff is objective, and it doesn't require.
Was there mathematical rules and principles in place before we started talking about
Absolutely,
mathematics?
absolutely.
Okay, so who created those mathematical laws and rules? Or did they just fall into place by
What I'm
chance?
saying is that the knowledge of those rules can be had objectively without
But you
reference
still
to
didn't
God.
answer my question. Mathematical rules, constants, gravity in this universe.